You might have a superiority complex since you, a Homo sapiens, survived while all the other homos, being Homo Neanderthals, Homo naledi, Homo heidelbergensis, and despite the name it has nothing to do with morning wood, Homo erectus, all vanished. But regardless of your comfortable life of curling up in warm fuzzy blankets with human problems such as obstructed nasal pathway, deviated septum, and chin the size of a pea, early ancestors did not have any of these human problems, and their chins were huge. They were enormous in their stature, had enormous heads with cosmic limbs and a gigantic dick. How did we become so small in comparison? Is it possible for us to evolve backwards? The University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology looks like a regular museum, but if you pay the guy in the shadows with an archaeological fact, take the stairs and travel down the basement, you'll find several hundred specimens of human skulls ranging from 200 to thousands of years old. They were part of the Morton collection, which was named after a very racist scientist, Samuel Morton, in the 1830s. He truly believed in white privilege and therefore collected skeletons to prove the superiority of the Caucasian race and claimed that he can see inferior races, but to his dismay, he couldn't find any difference. The skulls were visibly bigger. The two holes at the back of the throat that connected the nasal passages were twice as bigger as they are today. All those ancient skulls had enormous forward-facing jaws, giving them the Giga Chad look, and big mouths, even though they couldn't speak. What's gross is that none of them ever brushed their teeth or saw a dentist, maybe because there were none at the time, but they still had fairly straight teeth. The forward facial growth and large mouths also created wider airways, which suggests that they likely never snored, had sleep apnea or sinusitis or any other chronic respiratory problems that affect modern populations. They did not because they could not. On the inside, their heads were literally caves, so if a bug enters from their nose, they're in for quite a labyrinth. On comparing, the modern skulls were the opposite. The chins had recessed behind their foreheads, jaws were slumped back, and sinuses shrunken. All modern humans showed some degree of crooked teeth. Humans are the only ones who routinely have misaligned jaws, overbites, underbites, and teeth with free will forging their own path in life. This is because evolution does not always signify progress, but change, and change can be for the better or worse. Nowadays, human bodies are evolving in ways unrelated to survival of the fittest. Instead, we are acquiring and passing on traits that harm our health. This idea, known as dysevolution, was popularized by Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman, and it sheds light on why we experience back pain, sore feet, weaker bones, and it clarifies why our breathing has become increasingly poor. About 1.7 million years ago, the first human ancestor Homo habilis was roaming the eastern shores of Africa because he did not have a job. He was eating a raw diet which took a lot of time, from killing to chewing to digesting. So he gathered stones and bashed the prey against rocks, which sounds like a case of aggression and unresolved past trauma, but it tenderized the meat. So it took less effort in digesting and chewing, saving more energy. But this energy has to be utilized. The committee of all organs sat around and discussed which organ deserves this supplemental energy. Each organ gave its best argument, but the brain, being the most persuasive, claimed it all and grew larger. We then discovered the miracle of fire around 800,000 years ago and cooked the food, which gave additional calories. Two things happened. Large intestine shrunk considerably under this new diet and gave another surplus of energy. Homo erectus used this energy to grow brain even further. Surprisingly, it grew about 50% bigger than habilis. Since the brain was growing at an astounding rate, it needed room to stretch out and do Pilates. So it had a brilliant idea of taking it from the rest of the face. Over time, the muscles at the center of the face loosened and bones in the jaw weakened and grew thinner. The noses of the early humans were squashed, which resembled like a monkey, but since the face shortened and mouth shrank, the nose protruded out. The smaller nose, however, was less efficient at filtering air and exposed us to more airborne pathogens and bacteria. The more we cooked food and made it softer, the larger the brain and the tighter the airways became. Sooner, the big-nosed Neanderthals, scrawny naledi, and thick-necked heidelbergensis were all killed off for one reason or the other, and the only humans left in the family tree was us. In colder climates, the noses would grow narrower and longer to heat up air before it enters the lung, and skin became lighter to absorb vitamin D. And in sunny and warm environments, we adapted wider and flatter nose, and skin became darker to protect from the sun. With the rise of vocal communication, larynx became shy and sank, creating more space at the back of the throat. In fact, it created so much space space, it made humans susceptible to choking. If the food is too big, we'll choke. If it's too small, we'll choke. Lesson here is, chew your food properly. Sadly, the same adaptations that would allow our hirsute forebears to outwit and outmaneuver other animals, mastery of fire, processing food, enormous brain, and communication, would obstruct our mouths and throats and make it harder for us to breathe. Bigger isn't always better, but it seems like ancient humans had quality time breathing with their Jupiter-sized noses.